in the Q&A session, and it's important for us to share to see your comments about this very high and important topic. This is the second EABC Nordics webinar. Our first sessions was in February and marked the launch of this community, and we had Mike Lane as our main speaker in that session. Mike challenged us to think about how AI is changing organizations, accelerating decision-making, and putting pressure on traditional ways of working. But today we're here with a different angle of this conversation, not about what AI is doing to organizations. We want to open the discussion about what is AI doing to internal communication, because most of the conversations about AI in our profession still focus on tools, productivity, content creation. But if AI is changing how organizations operate, then it's also changing what organizations expect from communications. And that brings us to a big question that I'm thinking about these last days. If AI make communications faster, does it also make communications more valuable? I'm not sure that if the answer is obvious, and that's exactly why we are here today. Before we move into today's keynote, I would like to introduce the two people leading and building this community. EABC Nordics was created as a space of communications professionals across the region to exchange ideas, challenge assumptions, and learn from each other. Behind that effort are Ellen Sumay and David Baldwin. Ellen is a communication advisor based in Oslo, Norway, specializing in data-driven communication strategies, technology, and public affairs. David is founder and communication and AI strategist based in Lund, Sweden. So we are three based in three different Nordic countries. I'm going to admit a new guest, so please give me a second. And we will continue now with the main speaker of today's session. Our speaker is Jonas Bladt Hansen. He has spent more than 2 decades working with internal communication, organizational transformation, and digital communication practices across Nordic region. Today, he works at the intersection of communication, AI, and organizational change, helping organizations rethinking how internal communications create value in increasingly complex and fast-moving environments. Many people are talking about AI. It's fancy and trend. But Jonas is asking a different question. What happened when AI changed the role of internal communication itself? His presentation today is called The End of Internal Communications as Usual. So let's see the answer of that question. Jonas, the stage is yours.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me and to everybody who joined today and would like to discuss this big question. I think it's a very, you could say, interesting time we're living in right now, right? So because there's so much talk about AI, and the question is at so many levels. So what we've tried to do today is actually to take a different kind of angle to it, and also maybe a more provocative angle to how AI is going to affect internal comms and also our own role. Sorry. So my name is Jonas, as Maria already said, and I live in Denmark, Copenhagen. I'm half Danish, half German, and have been working in the space for 25 years or so. And my interest has always been an intersection of internal communications and the digital developments that has always been. And since 2019, I've been working with generative AI and how this is going to impact our function, but also leadership in general. And since 23, it's obviously been taken off since ChatGPT came, And I've been doing a lot of different workshops with internal comms team, with corporate comms teams, in terms of figuring out how is this going to impact our function. So let's just move along and say, where are we going? Where's AI? How is AI impacting internal communications? And I think we could even make this very, you could say, dramatic statement that the end of internal comms is near, and then add to it, at least as we know it, right? Because it is obviously internal comms is going to be there. The big question is just in what kind of shape will internal comms then become? What kind of color will we be? What will we be doing in the future? And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, because there are different situations, there are different possibilities, and that's what we're going to discuss. And I guess as you all already feel and experience, is that AI is already reshaping the internal comms function. If whether you like it or not, there is I feel there are a lot of people who are using AI today. Obviously, I think you might be too, and we are discussing a lot about is it good, is it bad, what can I do with it, how can I do things a bit faster, and so on. But I think these are not the right questions to be asking. So even if AI may be hyped today, we are seeing that AI has a huge impact in the way we're using AI. The big question is, are we using it in the right way? Back in 2022, actually, when ChatGPT was launched, I sat down a whole weekend, tried to figure out what this actually was, and then I wrote this article on the left side, where I thought that this kind of technology is going to transform internal comms, in ways I couldn't really imagine, but I could just feel that this is going to change this. And it's so funny to think of that when I created this headline, that I wasn't even sure if I should call it ChatGPT, because I didn't know if this was something people would actually recognize over time. I thought this might actually just be a technical word for something. So I thought I should call it some kind of like this robot or something. But this is just how things were at the time. We didn't really know what this was, how it's going to impact it. But I think what I thought at that time was definitely right, but maybe not in a sense that I thought at that time. Because what we see right now is that's the article I wrote a couple of weeks ago, is that we talk a lot about AI taking over our jobs. And I think that's right. I think we see a lot of people being replaced by AI today. We see a lot of layoffs. Then we can discuss if it's because of AI or if they use the narrative about AI to get rid of people. But I think there's definitely a feeling that AI is replacing jobs right now. But I think there's also something to what I write here on this article, is that it might not be the tools, the use cases right now that are replacing people. It might actually be the narrative about the potential of AI that are replacing people right now, and the expectation that AI is going to be able to do something that we human are doing in a good way today. But regardless of what the situation is, we are in a situation right now where AI is going to potentially replace the work we're doing, and that's also something we need to discuss today. So back to the narrative. So one of the things I feel and see often in when I talk to communicators is that people they see themselves as working in a strategic function, or they think they are a strategic function, but they forget that that doesn't really matter. What really matters is the way your business, your stakeholders are seeing you. So if for instance, if your stakeholders think that the internal communication is primarily about content production, then you're working in the department of content production, and that obviously leads to to you risking, if they think that you work with content production, then they also might compare you with a Copilot subscription, right? To say that in a provocative way, because if they think AI can create content like 80% or 90% of the quality that you can, they might think that might be good enough, and that's basically it. Then IC will be in a way commoditized to that kind of service. And I think when we talk about AI, also talk to a lot of people who don't think AI is capable of a lot of things, and I would say that this is probably because those people are not really using AI for anything else than the basics. So, for instance, content production, or thinking about how can AI help me do things faster. That's not what AI is about. This is just the new, as I state here, it's just the floor. It's not the ceiling. It's just the new baseline. It's nothing. It's nothing that will add any value to it if you can do things a bit faster in the future. That's just an expectation that you are able to do so going forward. So that's not where we're going to. That's not where we should be looking when we look at AI use cases going forward. It's a great way to start, but then you have to develop your thinking in terms of what AI is for. I took this slide with me just to show you a bit about what's going on in the last year. You could say that when we started out with working with AI, we were very focused on prompt engineering. I still remember all this viral posts from LinkedIn where you could download prompt libraries and so on. That was a thing in 24, and 25, 26 is all about context engineering, where it's about training a language model in order to understand something about your business or something about the problem you're trying to solve. And that's actually a good thing for us, because what we can do is we can definitely deliver some context to these language models so that they are trained to solve problems, tasks, challenges in our organizational context. And I think one of the things we should be focusing on in the future as internal communicators is to have as much context contextual understanding of how the business is operating, because that's not something a generic AI model can do. So just think about that today. It's prompting is more like using a generic chatbot for one task. Context engineering is what we're going to do going forward, where we have to understand what kind of context does the language model need in order to solve the challenges in a way that works in our organizational context. And then this is a model I created on my own, just to give some kind of understanding where I think we are today and where we're developing in the very short term. Is that we are right now, I believe most of us are in the so-called chatbot era. So we are using a chatbot to solve some of our day-to-day challenges, tasks, and so on. Most of us are not yet using AI for agentic workflows. This is coming, and this is definitely something to look into. We will see more agentic workflows going forward. The language models are improving, becoming less, you could say, make less failures, becoming more stable and so on. So this is definitely something to look into. And then we have another level, which is about creating products. And here I talk about thinking our services as a software. So what kind of things are we doing in the internal comm space that we can actually productify, if you can say so? And here vibe coding becomes a really interesting thing to look at. And in the bottom, you can say, I call it the AI gym, which is hopefully another service that I'm going to develop in the future. But there is something about that. You can't just go to a workshop or to a course and then think you have learned everything about AI gym. You have to have a process for how you learn in a continuous way in the organization, and also how you unlearn to do things, because that's going to be even more important, I guess, to unlearn some of the things you thought you had to do when you worked with internal communications. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Yeah.
Sorry, we have some questions, but I don't know. What do you prefer, to do it right now or at the end in the
No,
Q&A?
it's fine to do it right now.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would just be too many questions all over the place.
Perfect. Maybe the ones that has questions could hands up or something like that. I have one question from Helen in the chat.
Yeah.
Ellen, you want to tell us your question, or I read them?
Sure. I was just curious, Jonas, you mentioned how sometimes there's a gap between reality and perception in terms of how AI is impacting comms teams. And I wondered if you would say a little more about what you have observed in that gap.
So do you think back to the slide about our own perception of who we are and what other things think of us?
Well, and the idea that AI is going to be causing all these layoffs and reductions in staff for comms people, but that may not actually be realistic.
Oh yeah, so I think we are right. So actually, that plays into the story about agentic workflows, because if you want to have some kind of a scale, if you want to use AI at scale, you need to in some way look into your workflows and automate them with generative AI over time, because otherwise you won't get any, you could say, any efficiencies out of it. So or transform the way you're working, because if you're just sitting in the chatbot era, I think most of these things are just individual tasks where you become a bit more efficient on an individual level, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you as an organization are going to become more productive. So I think that's the challenge right now, is that people might think that there's the potential, but they haven't really started yet. So it's something that there's an expectation there that it's possible. And I believe it is over time, but I think there's definitely something to it, that right now we're still living. There's still a lot of belief in the narrative about AI being capable of doing so, but we're not seeing the huge return of investment yet. But we are. I mean, I can also, but that's more like my own experience is that I feel that there are internal communicators right now who have difficulties getting a new job at the moment. And if it's due to AI, I don't know, but I can just feel that there's something going on in the communications business right now that makes it a bit more difficult to get a new job.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Someone else ask? Yes? I could hear someone, but I don't know.
No, there's someone singing in the background, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Let's continue.
Should I move on? Yeah. So then I found an interesting article from actually from Boston Consulting Group being released a couple of weeks ago, I think it is, and where they looked into the corporate comms business as such. And I then said that there's a potential. I don't know how they make up the numbers, but there's a potential of productivity gains of this at the task level of 26 to 36%, and then on the process level even higher. So the process level would be, if you look at level 2, the agentic workflows, that's what I would assume would be the process level. And the chatbot era is more like on a task level where you see these productivity gains. But regardless of how you look at it, you need to figure out how you work with AI on a more team-based level, because it's not enough just to think that you've nailed it if you are using AI in certain ways. You need to think of this as how can we agree on how we use AI going forward as a team, and in which processes. And in internal comms, on corporate comms, I think one of the things we're not so good at compared to HR, for instance, is actually to have certain workflows described and defined. So that in itself is going to take some work for us to figure out how do we actually work, because a lot of it is day to day and sometimes maybe even a complete mess. But yeah, in order to get some value out of AI, we need to figure out what kind of workflows do we have to look at. And then there's something, if you look into the mirror, and these corporate comms, executives have been asked, how do you perceive your own comms function. It's in the same. It's from the same survey, from the Boston Consulting Group survey, where 68% of these chief communicators, they say that their own function is an AI laggard, and 88% say they're not ready to lead the AI transformation, which is really, you could say, disappointing. I would say actually is. Because I really think that this is a huge opportunity for communicators to take the lead on this. We could actually take the lead on also leading the AI transformation in the business. We should, I mean, we definitely should play a role in developing the narratives and so on, but we should also, I think, be on the front when it comes to understanding what AI is capable of, simply because communication and marketing and these functions are the functions that are definitely exposed to a lot of different AI use cases. So if these numbers hold true, I think this is very disappointing for our function that we are not on the forefront of understanding how AI is going to work. It's just it's really surprising to me. I don't know, what do you think about these numbers? Any idea, comments?
Maybe Jonas, the numbers are the numbers, but maybe what can we do to change this? At the end, it's something that is happening, and we could lead that transformation. We have that opportunity. So what can we do? What do you think about in terms of the teams and also in the organizations?
Yeah, on an individual level, it's about being very curious yourself and just start exploring, experimenting, doing stuff with AI. On a team-based level, it's more like, there's definitely a need for leadership in order to give time to experiment to begin with and focus on AI. That's also something I see that there's still definitely potential to do more of. Not a lot of organizations, they actually invest time in experimentation. It's still you could say a minority. So I think there's definitely something to do on an individual level, and then push it, then just like I did when I was working in corporate, just show some of these examples that you just figured out, because it's not because people don't want it. It's sometimes just because they don't have the imagination. And the only way to develop your own AI imagination is to get started on, developing stuff, watch some YouTube videos, read something about it, see what others are doing, learn from others, and then just be curious all the time to test new things. Things are just developing so fast. So what you learned 3 months ago and what wasn't possible 3 months ago is now possible. So it's just a steep learning curve. And I think I saw a very interesting presentation in Berlin a couple of weeks ago, where he talked about the presenter talked about how this evolution is exponential. So if you think you can just wait a little bit, then the gap will just become exponentially big. So the AI development goes like this, right? And if you are here, the gap is just going to be bigger and bigger, and you will just be, at some point, you will not be able to understand what AI is about anymore. So it's just about, now start today and learn about AI. That's the best advice I can give, and then relate it to your work, share use cases, talk about it, and then show how you can use that in the organization, how the organization can benefit from it. That's the best way to get started.
Thank you. We have another reflection from Monica. I don't know if Monica wants to do it or I'll read it.
Yeah, happy to. Let me just reveal myself. I was eating lunch, which is why I turned off my camera.
No worries.
Hi.
Lunchtime for a lot of us.
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, Jonas. This is really interesting, and it reflects exactly what I'm seeing. So I'm a freelance communications consultant. And I'm actually based in the UK, but I've got a family in Denmark, so I'm sort of interested in the Nordic perspective. And what I'm finding is there is still so many organizations completely afraid to touch AI, or they go straight for the tools without considering how to get people to use those tools. And there is absolutely no consideration in terms of taking people on that journey from explaining the value of AI to then potentially applying some tools. So So that 88% not ready to lead the AI transformation, I completely understand that. That's what I'm observing as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I think, I mean, one of the things I also see is the first role we at least could play is to help the organization develop a narrative about how we're going to use AI in the organization, because I often feel that this is really needed, because if the narrative becomes that this is about layoffs, this is about efficiencies, then people obviously are not motivated to use it, because why should they? Why should they train an AI to lose their own jobs? I mean, that doesn't make sense, right? So if we don't shape a narrative about what this is, what the purpose is with AI, it shapes itself, and it might not be the narrative that is even realistic. Maybe it's not even maybe it's not even the organization's approach or goal to get rid of a lot of people. Maybe it's about just learning about AI, how we can transform our business. So yeah, definitely something we can start out with there, and then there's obviously the technological, the learning about AI, which is so important for us as well.
Yeah. Also, René was talking in the chat about the same topic. I don't know, René, you want to tell us about it? Reflection.
I think it is self-explaining, but as I also mentioned in the chats, I think what we see so far is also what Jonas was explaining. There's a little fear of going too deep into AI. We are afraid of losing our job, but I also think it's give us an opportunity to get rid of the manual work. 80% of my time I use in finance, and I can see the benefit of working with AI and see what efficiency I can actually has in the team. I'm not talking about eliminate my team, but I'm talking about to upgrade them to be better in the team and give them opportunity to develop themselves at the same time. But I think we still have this in our mentality, depending where we are from, but is dangerous. Afraid of these changes that's coming, but we have seen changes the last 5 years, and now suddenly we have a tool which is exploding. So we cannot just sit and wait. The train has left. So we really need to do an 100 meter faster than Mr. Bolt and all that to catch it.
Yeah, that's true. And I think what you said, René, about or what was it about your employees being afraid or skeptical to it, is I think that's the whole point about what I talk about, creating a good narrative or a direction for why we're going to use it, right? And I also feel that sometimes people who are not allowed to use it, they actually become disappointed, because, as you say, it's also part of your personal development, right? Because I would imagine that from now on, there will be an expectation to everybody, regardless if you work in the finance department or in the communication department, that you know how to use AI in your work.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you can see the evolution we have had in so many things since the 60s, 70s. It has been speedy, and at some point, I don't need to use that, and that was fair at that point. But now, where everything is more digitalized, then it suddenly has a different impact and the different challenges we need to take on.
Yes.
Thank you, René. Before Leo, I want to read a question that Asaf made in the chat. Thank you for this interesting observation. What size of organizations did this survey include? And what is the difference between big firms and small businesses?
So the first question is not something I have detailed knowledge of. I would assume that it would be a mix of large organizations and smaller, but not very small businesses. The difference between big firms and small businesses, that can be many differences. But my feeling is that actually most big organizations, they are limited in terms of what they are allowed to use. Often, very quickly, it it gets to be Microsoft they are going to use, which is another problem that I see, is that you start out choosing a tool and you're not looking at the different potentials that AI has. Then you limit yourself to a tool, which is, in this case, I think it's very, very limiting in terms of what you then can do. But that's often the case. Rigid would also be a key word here. But also big firms, they often have their own departments who are looking into generative AI, which I believe is definitely a way for developing your organization. So they have their Gen AI teams looking into how to use Gen AI in the organization in a responsible way. Small businesses, what I say, are more flexible in terms of how to use it, but I also feel that they are actually falling a bit behind, because they are really in the operational business. They don't have the resources to look into how to use AI. So that's their big challenge, that as I see, even if they have the opportunity to be more flexible, and even maybe the opportunity to compete with the big ones, because they could use AI in new ways, but they don't have the time to do so, or the competencies maybe sometimes.
Thank you, Jonas. Leo?
Yeah, thanks, Jonas, for today. I was just going to say, regarding Microsoft, that people are, when they work in large organizations, they're sort of locked in to Copilot, for example. That's the basic tool that communicators use, right? Or then perhaps you have, AI that can track a meeting or give you voice notes, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
But it reminds me of, 10 years ago when people were talking about digital transformation. People had sort of a love-hate relationship with it, because you had robotic process automation. You had things like, digital twins, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the problem that we have as communicators, or as people with perhaps journalistic backgrounds, AI produces a lot of slop, a lot of nonsense, a lot of drivel. Mm-hmm. You can always tell when something's written by AI, right? The danger is that then real humans they think about that in the back of their minds, and they think about the rule of three and how sentences are structured, and people then are perhaps afraid to actually publish content and say what they think. That was point number one. And then point number two, I think with the Boston Consultancy Group, I always take stats from these consultants with a pinch of salt, because obviously they're angling for for work with various companies, usually big companies, and AI.
Yeah.
But it's quite bizarre. We live in this AI world, but people are still producing PowerPoints and spreadsheets, and I don't see much of AI innovation within comms, right? With the day-to-day. People want to learn, but they simply don't have the time to do it. That was just a few comments.
I hope to show you a few examples in a second, what we can do. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yes.
Well, now Renee also has a question, then David, and then Evelyn. So I don't want to interrupt anyone, so let's do the questions.
It's not a question, just a comment. You said this with suddenly you cannot do it because as lack of this internally in the department. As I see it, scaling is not the same as growth. So scaling is what you need to do internally, and so this fear of AI takes everything. Again, I think that is something we need to think about, but you also need to scale to understand the new technology.
Yeah.
In finance also, when we use, everybody's in the same, but you have to scale. And if the management do not want to scale, then you have a big gap. And then you will still run on your Excel sheet and PowerPoint and all that, because this is our safe haven we have used for 20 years plus more. So, so you go there. I can see when I'm sitting with a Claude in a financial model and whatever, people say, yeah, what does the Excel say? Relax, let's go over it and all that.
Yeah, I think it's an important point, René, also because when you try to scale, that's where all the complexities they come, right? So that's where the real learning ticks in. It's easy enough to sit with your chatbot and do it on your own. But then when you want to scale, then it becomes risky, complicated, and all these kind of things, and also potentially expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. David.
Yes. I was thinking of holding off till you finished your presentation because I thought you might say what I'm going to comment, because I also saw something about it in your LinkedIn post previewing the event. But now when everyone was talking, I just felt like I couldn't keep my mouth shut either. So, so a few points. One, you were saying about teams needing to use AI better and show each other their work. I think that's really important, because imagine that, like, maybe some people are AI power users and some people struggle with AI, but even if there's 3 different power users on the same team and they're not connected in any way, everyone is using in the silo, then maybe they each have 3 different brilliant ways of using AI, and but they still work inconsistently. And if you're doing communications, you might have 3 different brand voices that are coming through, even if they're all quite good. And then you have the others who are or struggle with AI, who have to reinvent the wheel and try to create it again when a colleague could have already had something to work from. So that's one problem, working in silos like that. But then on the other hand, imagine that before AI or without AI, that a lot of times organizations will have like some core values and brand voice and these documents, but they're not really used consistently. I mean, it's not like everyone has them top of mind every single time they write something within the whole company. But if comms would take the lead on AI, as you're suggesting, then those could be incorporated in a way so that everyone would be reminded of them and everyone would follow them in some sense. I mean, not perfectly, but you would be able to have a much more consistent use of the brand and have it like across teams and across the company. I think maybe you had said something about that too, that you don't have to, it's not only in the comms function, but that there are people in all other departments who do some form of communication on their own. And then with the comms-led AI processes, it could upgrade their communication a lot and make it consistent with the brand voice. So I see a lot of potential there.
Potential, yeah, definitely potential, and I think that was my last slide. You talked about that, David. But I totally agree. There's a potential, because there's a choice between, should we let people still work with the generic chatbot, or should we actually take the lead on developing something that helps them, that is trained on the organizational context, so that it delivers better output than a generic chatbot would do. And that could be our task as well, right? To train these on the contextual understanding.
Yeah, and I would just say that doesn't necessarily mean just dumping everything into it. That's also a very careful, tailored process to give it the right way to interpret each part of it.
Yeah, and that's something we need to learn as well. It's not a lot of people who know how to do that right now. It's something we need to experiment with and learn on the go. Evelyn?
Yes. So I've been thinking about what everyone was saying and realizing that I think that communication actually could have a really key role in the whole transformation about AI, because it is essentially a transformation, and what is more important than communication, both when you see at the internal communication and the external, because in the internal communication you would need it's essentially change communication, because I read that a lot of technical implementations fail because of failures in the communication systems. And people don't understand exactly what the implementation is for, or they don't accept it, and then the implementation won't look as it was expected. So communication definitely have a role there, but I also think in the external communication, because so many people are skeptical about AI and about the ethical questions, I think communicators could also have a role in the narrative and how to communicate with the customers and the public. For example, I worked as a communicator in publishing. And people are very skeptical in publishing about AI because, of course, it's a threat to writing. But it could also be used in efficient ways, for example, for the administrative tasks.
Yeah.
So if you could own the narrative and talk about it in a way that makes sense. And I also think since AI has such a big impact on sustainability and the environment, that is also a big question that the public and the customers are curious about, and that could be communicated in the right way and, of course, implemented in the right way.
Yeah, and there's a lot of need for conversations right now. It's not only about one-way communication. It's very much about sense making and have a good conversation about these things. That's also maybe also a mindset for us to think about that. We don't need more top-down communication or more or try to convince people. It's more like having conversations so that people can understand and discuss certain viewpoints with each other. Right? That's really important now.
Yeah, have you seen any trends in like communication at bigger and smaller companies? Because I know in publishing, some of the bigger publishing houses had like a policies or code of conduct that they publish.
I see policies, but I don't see a lot of great policies that are really helpful to people. It's more like sometimes a bit too much detail. Sometimes it's what you are not allowed to do, and it's still something we need. And it's just like, yes, a policy is fine, but then the real work starts, right? The conversations start about these things, because you can't. It's not really. It's not enough just to communicate a policy. Then you have to really work with it.
So then we definitely have a big role there, especially if the numbers look like this.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, should we move on a bit?
Jonas, please continue with the presentation.
Slides. So I mean, if we really put it on the what's it called, on the edge, we could say it's not the technology holding IC back. It's us, and we now have a challenge, or we can go in two different directions. We could do business as usual, and internal comms risks becoming a commodity, simply because that if the perception is that content production is something internal comms is normally doing, this is something AI can do, and then it becomes it's just being commoditized by AI. Or we can see internal comms as a differentiator, and you already talked a bit about this. Context, for instance, as something we can deliver. We can rethink a lot of things, develop new approaches with AI. That's something I hope to show you in a second. But one important point is still also when you think about how to develop the internal comms function, is we can't just think about using AI in isolation. We need to think about how is AI being used around internal comms. And I saw a really interesting presentation from Y Combinator, who are these venture funds who are investing in new organizations. And there was a guy who did a presentation about building the AI native company. And it's obviously very radical, but I think it's interesting to see where they see things are evolving, right? So for instance, the statement about make the organizational legible to AI. So point being here is record everything, right? If you like it or not, but record everything, document everything, because what you want now is to train AI with as much context as possible, because that would give you an edge compared to others. So that is, and then as you see in the last one, on-demand internal software for all company ops. That's something we come back to in a second, but develop products that people can use from different departments, which is also something that's going to be really interesting, but also an opportunity for internal comms to scale again. And another one is also, again, very provocative, is burn tokens, not headcounts. So focus, as you can see here, 80% less headcount than old companies. So AI native companies should be built with 80% less headcount than old companies. And as you can see, what they are looking into are these administrative roles that are not needed anymore, and then saying, if your API bill don't make you uncomfortable, you're not doing enough. So it's just a really interesting take on how they think organizations are being run or should be run in the future or built. So let's just think about this in a sec. Let's just think if this is really going to happen, and let's say organizations are starting to build these kind of agent, these work streams, and you have these agentic, you could say, solutions marketing has one, sales has one, and then it comes to internal comms, so we don't have anyone, then we are actually becoming this kind of manual step in the agentic chain. And do we want to be that? Can we allow us to be the show? What would the argument be? But this is I think this is the future we are looking into. In if you just think a few years from now, there will be this kind of demand for us from the organization to where they are asking, what kind of agents can you build so that you fit into this change project or whatever it might be, so that we can deliver this strategy as fast as possible. So this is, and what we're talking about here is actually still kind of a both commoditization of internal comms, but it's also about scaling internal comms in different ways, as you talk about, David, right? So here's a potential to build different solutions that are trained with our context, with our expertise, that are able to deliver good quality internal comms at scale, hopefully. And then there's definitely also an opportunity for us to focus less on producing content and more on making sense. So, for instance, capture a lot of this intelligence in the organization. So, let's say internal social media, for instance, what's going on there? What are people discussing here? Are there anything we are missing out on? Can we communicate about? Should we address some of these things that they're talking about? That is actually a real possibility. So one of the things I've developed, and that's Leo, one of the examples that sorry, who was that? Was it Leo who asked this question? I can't remember now, but about products. What are that was you, Leo, right? What could be new products that we're developing? One of the things that I see, and I'm going to pilot this in a Danish company actually, together with Howard Kreis, who wrote the book, co-wrote the book, leading the listening organization, where we look into how can we build an employee insights brief for the internal comms department, but also for the management, where we look into certain things that we already have available today. So let's say, what questions are being asked in town halls? What are we actually communicating? So what articles are we sharing on the internet? What kind of narratives are we trying to shape? What are the comments? What are people talking about at Viva Engage? And we analyze all that, and it gives us some kind of insights in terms of what are people interested in and what are we actually talking about, and where are the gaps that we need to address. So that could be one of these new products that we would be delivering in order to help leadership management address the things that people are interested in, but maybe also gives them some insights that they didn't have before to make better decisions. So this could be an example. Have a look at it when you get the slides. But this is just a dummy example of how could an employee insights brief look. I'm not going to deep dive on it right now. It's just something for you to look at in when you get the slides. But it's definitely interesting to see the opportunities. For instance, the narrative gap tracker could be interesting, and then some potential deep dive and insights and so on, where you can see what kind of insights would we expect to get from this. So that was the one opportunity. Then the other, we already touched a bit about it, but there's definitely an opportunity to build new solutions. So for instance, let's call it the reaction simulator that predicts how a message will land for certain target groups. A change readiness radar that would be, you could say, packed with context from certain angles of the organization that could analyze the resistance or the readiness in the teams, and what to do about it. Could be a persona agent that could create different messages for different personas and so on. And all this could be packed into different agents that the organization can use. We are the ones training them. We are the ones delivering the context, but then the organization can use it, and we are becoming the so-called orchestrator instead of the producers going forward. And then I spoke a little bit about vibe coding earlier on, and it might be a hype right now. People are saying that's not possible because it's there's so many, you could say it's so risky to use and so on. But it's not what that's not what I see when I talk to software vendors right now. Actually, I can see that this is from Staffbase, the event I was in Berlin. This is a solution that's built into the Staffbase platform, where you can now vibe code your own intranet features in a safe space. So that means if you miss a feature in Staffbase, you can vibe code it now. So vibe coding is just chatting, and then it generates code and it builds something. And I've heard the same thing from other vendors, and I also spoke to Telekom, their software MMS, their software department, MMS, Telekom MMS in Germany, and they actually they are offering this as a third-party software that can be integrated into Microsoft. So that means that this is coming up. This is actually possible in the near future to write code solutions, which means that it's becoming easier to build products in the organization and deliver them in the organization internally. So this is a space I would definitely watch for the coming month and for the coming year, because this is something you need to think of as an opportunity in internal communications. So we could say that there are definitely two things that I can see that internal comms could become right away, and we could use this as kind of a vision or direction for internal comms, is that we can think of internal comms to scale internal comms in the organization. So that would, you could say, improve the quality of internal comms, the bottom 80% maybe. We always talk about the top 20%. We can't improve that with AI, but we certainly can do something about what's going on in the organization and help them become better at communicating. And then we can use AI to get some more insights for listening purposes, and help create internal comms with more relevance. That are more relevant to the target groups, and hyper personalize it, which is also something that a lot of software vendors are already offering right now. Make it more inclusive, focusing on delivered in multiple languages and so on. So that's what I see, and then I think it's very important to say that we shouldn't wait for change to happen. We should create it ourselves, because there's no one going to share a great idea or coming to our desk and say, hey, why don't you just transform the internal comms department with AI? It's something we need to do. We need to create the change. We need to create the direction we want to go in, and this is a fantastic opportunity to do it right now. I think it's one of the biggest windows of opportunities we have, but we should also be aware of, if we don't use this opportunity, we might see that internal comms will become commoditized by AI. So is this the end of internal comms as we know it? Yes, it is, but it's not the end of internal comms. It's only if we let it be that, right? So that's something I think we should be very aware of. So there's something on our shoulders right now to get right. I think it's also, as I said, a huge opportunity. So that was my slides.
Thank you so much, Jonas, for this very, very inspiring conversation. And I think in some points a little uncomfortable for us, but in a good way, to think and rethink our role. So that's really important. Before to continue, I want to take a screenshot for all the attendants.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's possible, Jonas, to stop sharing your presentation so I could see all the attendants in the screen.
Yes.
The ones that are here maybe could turn on the cameras if it's possible. Well, I will do it right now. I'm going to do the screen. Wait me a second, please. Smiling, you are so happy. That's super cool. Thank you so much to all. Okay. This definitely was a very interesting conversation. That strikes me most is that your presentation, Jonas, isn't really about AI. It's about relevance and how relevant is a role. It's about whether internal comms continues to define itself, but content production, or whether it evolves into something closer to organizational intelligence. That's some topic that I really have in my mind. I want to.
It's in the pilot that we're developing right now with a large Danish organization. That's actually we're discussing, should we be using the intelligence for ourselves to communicate in a more relevant way, or should we use it to help the managers? And I think it's both, right? So we can both use it for developing better internal comms, and and to give something to the executive leadership to make better decisions.
Thank you. Also, I want to say thank you to all of the audience, the attendants. We have a very good Q&A in the middle of the presentation, so that was super good. And I think when the questions are organic, are also better than when we produce them before or schedule too much the presentation.
It's always nice with some context, before you present or when you present, not in the end.
Yeah, really, really good. So, but before finish, I want to highlight 3 ideas that I state me today, and maybe you too. The first one, the challenge is not AI itself. The challenge is defining the future value of internal communications. The second one is producing content faster is not necessary a strategy. Understanding people better, maybe. And the third one, the future relevance of internal communications may depend less on what we published and more on what we help organizations understand. For me, that's where one of the strongest ideas of this today discussion. And maybe you could share in the chat your main ideas or the ideas that you take from the conversation. So before we finish, we love to help shaping the future of this community. Remember that we are in the EABC Nordics community, and we are part of EABC EMENA conversation. This community began as a simple idea to create a Nordic space where communication professionals can think together about changes and shaping our work. Also, you could be part of the WhatsApp community where we could share some experiences. And let's see us in our next EABC Nordics conversation, probably on September. We will share to you more information about it and the date or when it will be. So thank you so much for the conversation and for the attendance.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. Bye.
You too.